Oh, oh, are we about to go live? We are live. All
Hello,
right.
hello.
Hello, everyone, if you're out there.
This is mostly an experiment, and
Colloidal silver, is that right today?
yes, colloidal silver, zinc, and copper is what we will be making.
So colloidal copper and colloidal zinc.
Yes, sir.
Wow, okay. I've never actually heard of those. So they're obviously good for you as well. Could imagine.
Well, I've been drinking the water for 5 years now, and I've consumed some little tiny bits of the particles over time, and people say I look healthy and happy. So, um, it's
5 years, wow.
it's the Keshi cup of life is what he calls it, the Gans plasma water, where he does the zinc and copper, and then we're adding in silver as well onto it.
So is that
And
all?
anyone that is going to wants to try this, if you do it wrong, it can be very dangerous. So I recommend you do your research first and go to the keshifoundation.org and read up on the GANS plasmas, the cup of life, and the whole process, because the last thing you want to do is drink something or consume something that has oxidized,
Yeah,
or that's calcified
it's to do with
or
contamination, isn't
sulfide.
it?
Yeah, so on the camera right now you can see that yellow or the orange or the gray colored on the jar there, or the black. Anything like that you never ever consume, and that you put aside for later usage in what turns into the plasma drives for making energy. But uh, you want it to only look like this,
White.
pure white specifically, and that's when it is monoatomic. If it turns blue, greeny, then it's oxidized, and that's biatomic or
Yeah.
diatomic,
Yep.
and it's no longer your single monoatomic plasma state atom, and that is what gives you your metal poisonings, the toxicity of heavy metals.
Yeah.
And
So
also, when experimenting with the AC electrolysis, you only want to stick to your soft metals of gold, silver, zinc, and copper. If you go into heavier metals, this is actual cold fusion that happens. They're less stable in their atom, and radiation will occur. Uh, Martin Fleischmann, the discoverer of cold fusion, they claimed to debunk him, and he died of radiation cancer because being unaware of the experiments and the radiation that he was exposing himself to over all of the years.
yeah.
And I theorize this is also the cause of death, mysterious deaths to this day, of many ancient alchemists over the years, and that they must have been experimenting with the higher metals and causing this radiation exposure to themselves. You never drink the salt water. You have to flush once you've made the pure white monoatomic plasma, um, silver, zinc, copper. Um, you have to flush all of the salt water and the dissolved stuff in it out. So you rinse it 9 times, where you pour out all of the water and just the monatomic stuff at the bottom, and refill the bottle and let it settle again. Doing this at least 9 times before consuming the top water.
Yeah, because you never actually consume the powder stuff, do you? It's just the water that's around it.
Yes, and when it's in the water like you see now, all disturbed, never ever drink it or consume it like that. That I've had little bits of it over the years, and that supposedly, if you make it like this out of gold, that will be your pure monoatomic gold. But the majority of people that I've ever seen that have consumed it in not even that large of amounts over the internet and stories, 99.9% of them have gone insane. And you're essentially dealing with the technology or essence of the demigods with the pure monoatomic gold. And it's the Egyptian Book of the Dead is the practices of how to ingest and properly consume and transform, taking the monatomic gold, aka Philosopher's Stone, aka mana, aka life
Mana,
force, or
life
whatever it
force.
is.
Yep.
And like I was saying, the position of the moon and the sun, that with these metals, and it in the Egyptian Book of the Dead, the rites for taking it, it specifically states during like an eclipse or something, you have to start it, and you have to fast, and you have to like be spiritually and consciously ready for it. And you start with very small amounts and increase it incrementally. And I myself still have not consumed any monatomic gold yet myself. And
Well, there's lots of
yeah,
interesting stories about monoatomic gold, isn't there?
David Hudson, the original discoverer and I believe US patent owner of, he calls it ORMUS, orbitally rearranged molecular electron structure, or something like that, but or monoatomic structure. It's the exact same. It's a different acronym
Yep.
for this single state monoatomic, just like Keshi calls it GANS, gas, atom, nano, solid state. That's just another acronym for this monoatomic plasma state metal element. And the most recent video I saw of David Hudson was him in China, and it was from a few years ago, and it was like one of his only updates after like he did all of his original work, I believe in the early 2000s. And he was talking about himself taking this monoatomic gold, ingesting it the certain way, and a few others experimenting with it, and that they were going to turn into demigods essentially. And it was a really, really weird sort of video, and a lot different from his earlier ones. And just, I guess, essentially take that as a warning for if you're going to attempt. I just would not recommend anyone ever ingesting the monoatomic stuff unless you are literally on your deathbed, like the doctors saying you have 2 days to live with the amount of cancer your body is riddled through. You have an equal chance of poisoning yourself or going absolute losing
So,
your mind, you know, like
so did that guy go insane? Did he? Is he not around anymore? That
or he's in a breakaway civilization and technology, like,
just disappeared, has he? Become a demigod?
yeah. And it was that the he stated like that the Chinese government or some institution was like officially backing his research, and it was like a press conference in China sort of thing. Like, There were certain things he could talk about and certain things he couldn't talk about. I don't even know if the video is still up there. Like,
Wow. Interesting that you say demigods, like the fruit of the demigods or whatever, and then of course all the planets used to be called gods, didn't they? So, you know, is that a link to that? You know, when there's a certain planet around that
the
become the
thought has
god of
crossed my
Mars or
mind.
whatever, you know, all this kind of stuff.
Um, another main thing is making sure that you get real zinc. The stuff I get is called Goodbye Moss Roof Strip Pure American Zinc. And a lot of galvanized steel is sold marked as zinc. So you have to be very careful not to get the galvanized steel by accident, because it'll start making your zinc for about 2 hours and then it will switch to iron, which
Yeah, is a heavier metal.
isn't necessarily the best.
Yeah. So galvanized is that's the one with that kind of what do you call it, like a mottled sort of look, is that right?
Galvanized steel is just
Or is it just that powdery gray stuff?
It's silver looking, and it's just iron with a layer of zinc over top of it. So it's
Oh,
like zinc
okay.
plated.
So that jar with the bad stuff in it, was that made on purpose, or is that something that's just got contaminated and gone bad?
So this one right here,
Yeah.
that well, that was made intentionally. I also was using aluminum in that one. Never ever use aluminum for water you're going to drink yourself. The monoatomic aluminum has the most electric properties I've seen out of any of the monoatomics so far. They're pretty cool. When you make it and then you seal it in the jar, it will actually move around and create its own buoyancies and crazy interactions for weeks, if not months afterwards on its own. Like,
Wow.
it's so cool, the nano clusters and structures and self-organization, and just it's like it comes alive. It's it's hard to describe, but if you guys see the yellow, the red, the gray, the beige, the black, that one was copper, aluminum, and iron. So those three metals made all these crazy other compounds. And it's that I theorize and looking to get tested that the yellow is a sulfur compound and that the red is a mercury compound, which would give evidence towards transmutation, cold fusion happening in there, that these other bonding metal agents are coming out of nowhere. Well, or coming out of the other atoms through transmutation.
Yeah. Yeah. It's changing form at an atomic level, isn't it?
And there's a PhD, Robert Moon, and he was America's most renowned chemist or atomic chemist up until the early 2000s. I think he retired, might have passed away sometime recently, but he came up with a theory which I personally believe is most fitting theory, but it's standing wave energy of the platonic solids that make up the shapes of the structures of the atoms, and that they double bond in particles so that's where you get like your dissolving water, and then the metal element, the monoatomics, bonding in with the particles, or how this cold fusion swap of the sulfur and mercury manifesting out of the salt in the water in the alchemical cold fusion transmutation process.
Okay, so like,
Um,
so
seeing
so
by the look on your face, I know that I have
yeah,
to
yeah, no, no, I'm just
explain
trying
this
to
much better in
explain
depth.
it. So, is this right? So there's basic structures, in nature that are based on, geometry and sacred geometry. And so when you have different chemical compounds, they can release bonds from one compound and join another to make a more complex or whatever, or a different geometric shape. That is that correct? Like there's sort of like different shapes that they go into.
Yes, absolutely, and that it has to do. It ties in with all of Walter Russell's work and the octave, universal octave structure, and um, yeah, there's no way I can like properly explain this
Yeah, yeah,
without
yeah,
sounding like a crazy person,
yeah. No, I
without
think
having the
I
reference
understand
pictures up forward.
exactly. I understand what you're saying, but yeah, it's trying to explain it. But yeah, basically, I mean, basically, there's certain structures that appear in nature, and they're repeatable. They appear over and over. So if you have a chemical that's molecular structure makes a square and it's next to one that's a pentagon or whatever, then one bond can leave the square and that'll turn into a triangle, and it can join the pentagon and turn it into a octagon or whatever.
You got it. You got it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Cool.
And it's that certain families of the elements on the periodic table, depending where they lie in the octave range, like the octave chart going
Yeah.
back and forth, that's what shape their crystal
I,
structure takes,
yeah,
or
because
their form takes.
each octave represents a geometric shape as well. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So does that mean that you could potentially transmutate through sound and frequency?
That is a key part of my thesis, yes, and that the Hertz frequency, the resonant frequency of the elemental matter, added up, whatever molecule, all the resonant frequency of each element particle in the molecule will equal the molecule's resonant frequency. You put that same resonant frequency in as the voltage, or that's the part
Yes.
I got to figure out, is the
Yeah,
electrical
yeah,
conversion.
okay.
But the Hertz
The
frequency
hertz.
going in as your anode current,
Mm.
and then
So like
the
528 hertz or 432.
exactly.
Yeah.
Um, so like each element at its very basic has a resonant frequency, right? And they're the lower ones because those are the building blocks, and that you put the resonant frequency of the metal that you are going from on the cathode side, and then the resonant frequency that you're wanting to turn that same metal into on the anode side.
Wow.
And I'm working on acquiring two variacs, or what they're called, to control the voltages specifically, to test this thesis and continue further my experiments.
Wow.
So
Okay, so I'm thinking star forts were always on water. I'm wondering if, and geometric, I'm wondering if they were charging the water somehow or doing something.
oh, huge, absolutely.
Yeah,
I
to the
guarantee
structure of
that.
the water, even in the oceans, and that just sort of, I don't know, whatever, creating a harmonious or whatever. I mean, you could see if that's true, then you could literally, clean pollution and stuff in the ocean, couldn't you? You could just transmute it.
Absolutely, right? And the living memory, the crystal memory of water. I forget the name of the Japanese scientist that discovered it.
Emoto?
Sorry?
Emoto?
Yeah, Emoto.
Yeah.
You got it. And um, that by putting in a specific frequency to that water, you change its memory, you cleanse it,
Mm,
cleanse it essentially.
exactly. Mm,
Um, Actually, the Joe cell is the technology. It's a independent experimenter and developer scientist out of Australia.
yeah.
He's been around for at least 20 years, but he claims, and the results seem to show, that when you have three concentric circles of metal sheets into water, with each having a different frequency going into each ring of the metal, that he's been able to turn water into actual physical oil, transmutates water, straight distilled water, into like car oil.
Petroleum
Like,
oil.
and
What?
oh, and there's plenty of his videos up showing exactly that, where they take like straight water and show you that it's water, like it has all the water properties, put it into his Joe cell. The videos go only like a minute long, doesn't cut out at all, then dumps it, runs it through for a few seconds, dumps it on the ground, just lights right up, and you can see even like the viscosities changed of it and all sorts of stuff. And he talks in his scientific manner the same way that Keshi does, explaining that it's field interactions, and that
Yeah, well, with three rings at different frequencies, it would have to be, yeah.
exactly, and it goes back to Robert Moon's standing wave energy that makes up the energy fields, or the geometric structure of atomic matter as it materializes. Thus, if you're changing the resonant frequency standing wave in that matter, and you get each frequency correct, that that's how it's cold fusion. It's how nature works. That you're just matching the energy patterns
Yeah.
of the flow of
Mm.
the matter, of the energy in its most etherical, ether-based
Yeah.
state, I guess.
It's like a seed, um, seed sprouting. Like if you ask science, they don't really know the mechanism that makes a seed sprout. They're just going to say, oh, water, you know. But it's actually like it's interaction of different fields, like the frequency of the water and the ground and the temperature, and that all interact, and it yeah transmutates pretty much, pops open, doesn't it?
And that's also why the charged colloidal waters, the structured water, this plasma water, theoretically increases the crop yields and the health of all living beings, organisms that consume.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's probably what biodynamics is sort of running off. Is it's all to do with getting different microbes in the ground, and they probably just are changing the structure, which is of the water and that, and so the plants grow better. But I mean, yeah, just watering plants with structured water,
Uh,
or is that in a closed
Standing
circuit of
wave,
some
another
kind?
word for it is like scalar wave. It's like a third or a fourth dimensional wave. I believe modern academia calls it gravity waves. Eric Dollard does great uh, explanation of standing waves and how to create them, as well as Vinny St. Vincent there that we reviewed a while ago. He also has a really good understanding of how to create standing waves.
Cool. Yeah, I just went outside and the sun can see the sun and the moon. They're not actually that far apart.
Yeah, right. And so that is something like a project that I want to work on with subscribers and viewers long term is taking video or pictures throughout the year, throughout the lunar and solar cycles, with fixed landmarks on the horizons, and hopefully people can get like with ancient the three arches and see if the sun, they can get it in like the solstices and the equinoxes,
Yep.
as well as anyone around any henges or the astrological calendar, stone calendars and whatnot, to also capture images and positions of the planets as well,
Mm.
because it's been discovered that lots of these extremely old and confirmed ancient stone star maps, megalithic henges, are not just aligned to the moon and the sun's cycles, but also the different planets as well
Yeah,
as the constellations.
I think
And
definitely. Yeah.
with the results that I had with the monoatomic silver and its cycle with the moon, I'm extremely intrigued with the alchemical metals that are assigned to each of the planets
Mm.
and the energies that are with them, because this will actually link a scientific um, evidence and process and scientific method, discovering or
Mm.
disproving um, astrology all in itself, which is huge throughout all ancient societies and modern day societies. And that this, through alchemy and through understanding the largest physical masses and their movements and their positions on each other in the solar system or in the realm, and starts measuring and documenting these forces, because theoretically the electromagnetic forces and the gravitational forces of the planets and the sun and the moons are the largest energies acting in the physical and non-physical
Mm.
realms
Yep.
that we exist on this plane, so
Mm.
that there is a scientific basis for discovery and for testing and for proving that the ancients were much more intelligent and um, advanced in their understandings and certain technologies and certain powers and forces that are acting upon us daily, but that we've come to be ignorant of. And that the more, the deeper down the rabbit hole of alchemy my experiments and then the reading of the ancient esoteric and occult literature goes, the more realistic Merlin and like your witches, your warlocks, your everything is real, and
Yeah.
that there's it's a magic was just another word for technology.
Yeah, well, we've just been sold a script, that witches sit around cauldrons and wizards, have pointy hats with stars and moons and have wands and run around zapping people when that's not what they did. The magic was different. It's like, because magic, right? It's magi, the three wise men, but imagination. It's all right side brain kind of stuff, and understanding how everything fits in and integrates, rather than sort of modern science, which loves to chop everything up and divide it into, little particles and all that kind of stuff.
That's a really good point. Although the only thing I'm going to interject with is the iron cauldron of the witches and their potions. Actually, with
Mm.
the Keshi technology or this Baghdad battery, the cup of life, the fact that your DNA in this electrolysis gets reproduced on the cathode side, your amino acids, and that if they were using, say, a copper spoon on that iron cauldron and it was salt water, that could be a current all on its own. Like that, there's something more to these potions,
Yeah.
and that the spells, or at least the alchemists and like the wizards, their potions, where they were taking the essence of a plant, that's modern chemistry, that's the modern pharmaceutical, but that's how we've done it as shamanistic tribal society, old technology, old world science and understanding. And that somewhere there was at least one massive reset and purge where the old understanding was lost. And it goes back to before World War One and after World War Two, what everything that was taught to everything that became the exact opposite of, and stigmatized and turned into fringe, where it was taught as fact before that, being Atlantis, being catastrophism opposed to the continental shelf, and the plate tectonics, where every single, including even Darwin himself, was a proponent of catastrophism. Even though he believed in evolution, he stated that it was these reset cycles that provided the environment for different isolations of species to then happen, to then get wiped out and then evolve into new ones and whatnot. But it's that everyone was of this former understanding that there was Atlantis, a prior advanced ancient civilization, and that there had been a catastrophe and reset. And then on top of that, then there was Noah's flood more recently. So that was a second reset of maybe 3,000 years ago or so, or 3,500 or whatever. But that the big one where they built the biggest of the leftover monuments and the most advanced technology was probably 12,000 years ago during the Younger Dryas event there, where ocean levels rose 400 feet in 3 years. They've now got calculated down to. Before, they believed it happened over a couple hundred years. Now they understand that it happened in no more than 3 years, and there's been a lot of evidence showing that it was a comet that struck, or multiple comets, the ice sheet was covering northern Quebec and Hudson Bay in Canada, as well as in Greenland, and that they struck and instantly liquefied these ice sheets and flooded the world. 400 feet, the ocean rose instantly. And today, 85% of the human population lives on the coast. So
yeah, good point. Well, there's sunken cities all over the place. In the Bay of Bengal near India, when they had the tsunami a couple of years ago or a decade ago, and all the water drained out before the tidal wave, and they could see like cities out in the bay, like completely underwater.